They said it was going to be her day. A day of white roses, laughter, and promises. But behind every promise there was a shadow, and behind every smile a secret. She told me I wasn't invited, that I didn't belong. My son didn't fight her, and that was the part that hurt the most. So I stayed quiet. I watched from afar. But weddings have a way of showing the truth no one wants to hear. And when my son finally stood before everyone, the words he spoke didn't just silence a crowd, they shattered everything she thought she controlled. Because love built on lies never lasts. And respect can't be bought with a wedding ring. But before I continue, make sure you're subscribed to the Old Folks channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. We love to see how far our stories travel. The morning after the rain, she opened the old cedar closet, the one that had held her wedding dress for over 40 years. The faint scent of lavender and wood drifted out, wrapping her in memories of laughter, music, and the man who once promised her forever. She ran her hand across the lace, yellowed with time but still beautiful. For a moment, she imagined herself wearing it again, walking into her son's wedding as the proud mother she had always dreamed of being. But the mirror across the room reflected something else, a woman older now, eyes tired, shoulders slightly bent, carrying the quiet weight of years unspoken. Still, she smiled at her reflection. "They might not want me there," she whispered, "but I'll be ready anyway." Her fingers trembled as she laid the dress across the bed, smoothing every wrinkle, as though preparing it for someone else to remember her by. The soft ticking of the clock filled the room. And beneath it, another sound began, the slow drip of tears she hadn't realized were falling. The gift wrapped in gold. 2 days before the wedding, she sat at her writing desk, the one by the window where the sunlight turned everything golden. A small box sat before her, wrapped in ivory paper and tied with a silk ribbon. Inside was a single item, a pair of cufflinks. Not new, not expensive, but deeply personal, her late husband's cufflinks, the ones he wore when he held their son for the first time. She looked at them for a long time before closing the lid. Her voice was soft when she spoke, as if afraid someone might hear her heart breaking. "For you, my boy," she murmured, "so you'll remember where you came from." She sealed the box with care and wrote the note slowly, her handwriting elegant and steady. "To my dearest son, on the day you begin your forever, from the woman who gave you your first." Her tears dotted the edge of the envelope, smudging the ink slightly, proof that love, even when forgotten, still finds a way to show up. The dress stays behind. The wedding day arrived, bright, loud, and far away. She sat by the window, still in her nightgown, the dress hanging beside her like a ghost of what could have been. Outside, laughter carried from a distance, the faint sound of church bells, the hum of cars, the distant joy of people celebrating something she was no longer a part of. She held her cup of tea but never drank it. It had gone cold, like the silence in her heart. On the table lay the empty box where the cufflinks had been, sent the night before with a note and no return address. She tried not to imagine the moment he opened it. But in the stillness of that room, surrounded by memories and lace, one thought refused to leave her mind. Would he even recognize them? Or had she become a stranger, even in his memories? The sun was high, and the church bells rang across town, echoing through her quiet living room. She imagined the rows of white chairs, the guests smiling, the whispers of admiration for the bride. But one chair, the one meant for her, would stay empty. Not by accident, but by design. She sat alone, watching light dance across the floorboards. The radio played a soft tune, but she could barely hear it. Instead, she heard her own memories, her son's first laugh, his first day at school, the night he cried after losing his father. Each memory felt like a heartbeat that once belonged to her. And now, that heart was celebrating somewhere else, without her. The letter she never sent. By evening, she took out her pen again, the same one she'd used for the note with the cufflinks. Her hand shook slightly, but her words came steady. "I understand, my dear. Maybe your new life has no room for me. But know this, my love doesn't need an invitation." She folded the letter carefully, but instead of mailing it, she placed it in the drawer beside her bed. "Some truths," she whispered, "are meant to wait." Outside, the laughter from a distant house carried through the wind. It stung her chest like a memory refusing to fade. She blew out the candle beside her, and in that darkness, she made a quiet promise. One day, he'll remember. The news arrives. The next morning, her neighbor knocked softly, a kind woman who always brought her fresh bread. She smiled and said, "You must be proud, dear. Your son looked so happy yesterday." The old woman forced a small nod, her lips trembling just enough to betray the truth. When the neighbor left, the silence returned, heavier now, like a shadow that had finally learned her name. She walked to the closet once more, touched the lace dress still hanging there, and whispered, "You were supposed to be worn today." Then, her eyes caught something on the floor, a single white petal that must have fallen from the bouquet her son once gave her years ago. She picked it up and held it tight. "Maybe this," she said softly, "is the last piece of him I get to keep." The wedding passed. Days slipped into weeks, and not a single call came from her son. No photos. No messages. Not even a thank you for the gift she'd sent. Her phone sat on the counter, untouched, its silence louder than any words could be. She would check it every few hours, pretending not to care, pretending not to wait. At night, she'd turn off the lights and sit in her rocking chair, staring at the front door, imagining his knock. But it never came. And each night, the silence grew thicker, like fog swallowing her thoughts. The old photograph. One evening, while dusting the shelves, she found an old photograph, her son, aged 10, sitting on her lap, holding his father's watch. His smile was bright, pure. She traced his face with her finger, whispering, "Where did you go, my boy?" Her eyes moved to the frame, slightly cracked at the corner. She pressed it gently, and a piece of glass fell to the floor, splitting the image between them. It felt like life had done the same, separating them quietly, piece by piece. She held the two halves close to her heart. And for the first time, she whispered aloud, "Maybe I did lose him after all." The unexpected call. That night, just as she was about to sleep, the phone rang. Her heart leapt, it was his number. She hesitated for a second before answering, her voice trembling, "Hello?" But it wasn't him. It was the bride, her voice cold, clipped, polite. "Just wanted to say, the gift arrived. We'll keep it safe." No thank you. No warmth. Just finality. Before she could respond, the line went dead. She sat there, clutching the receiver, listening to the empty tone. And beneath that sound, one thought echoed like thunder, "What has she done to my boy?" A few weeks later, she found an envelope addressed to her. Her heart fluttered. Could it be from him? She rushed inside, tore it open, and froze. It was a holiday card, not from her son, but from a distant relative. Inside was a photo of the newlyweds, smiling in front of their new home. Her son looked happy, but his eyes looked lost. Like he was smiling for someone else. She sat on the couch, staring at the picture, tracing his face once again. "How far away can someone go," she whispered, "before you stop recognizing them?" The visitor at the door. That evening, a soft knock echoed through her house. When she opened the door, she found the postman holding a small brown parcel. "From your son's address," he said. Came with no note. Inside was her husband's old pocket watch, the one she'd given her son years ago. The chain was broken. The clock had stopped. She turned it over, and there was a small scratch engraved across the back, almost like someone tried to remove a name. Her hand shook as she whispered, "Why would he send this back?" The breaking point. That night, she sat in the dark, clutching the watch, its weight heavy in her palm. The rain began to fall again, tapping against the window like faint knocking. She imagined him standing outside, lost, cold, and uncertain. But when she opened the curtains, there was no one there, only her own reflection staring back at her. She whispered to it, "If he won't come to me, I'll go to him." And in that quiet moment, for the first time in months, she felt something awaken inside, not anger, but resolve. The kind that could no longer be ignored. A week later, her neighbor's daughter came by to help her with groceries. As they chatted, the young girl pulled out her phone and said, "Have you seen this video? It's all over social media, your son's wedding speech." The old woman's heart tightened. "No," she said quietly. "May I?" The girl nodded and handed her the phone. The video began with her son standing at the altar, holding a microphone, looking nervous but calm. Her breath caught in her throat. "Oh, my boy," she whispered. The words that changed everything. The speech began simply, the usual thank yous, the laughter. But then, his tone shifted. He looked at the crowd, his voice trembling slightly. "There's one person not here today, someone who taught me everything about love, sacrifice, and forgiveness." Her eyes filled with tears. He continued, "She wasn't invited. But if she can hear this, I want her to know, I am who I am because of her. Mom, this day is yours too." The guests fell silent. Even the bride looked frozen. The old woman pressed the phone to her chest, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her heart, which had been quiet for so long, began to beat again. The crowd's reaction. In the video, the audience began to clap slowly, then louder, until the hall filled with sound. Her son smiled through his tears, looking at the camera as if trying to reach her through it. And for the first time, she saw him again, not the groom, not the husband, but her little boy. The video ended. Silence filled her room. Outside, sunlight streamed through the curtains, golden and soft. She looked up and whispered, "You remembered me, my son." But a quiet question lingered, what did that speech cost him? The next day, her phone rang once more, the same number. Her heart raced. She picked up quickly, her voice trembling, "Hello?" This time, it was him. "Mom," he said softly, his voice heavy with emotion. For a moment, neither spoke, only the sound of quiet breathing filled the air. Then, he whispered, "I'm sorry for everything. You should have been there." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "You remembered me. That's all that matters." But before she could say more, she heard another voice in the background, his wife's, sharp and cold. "End it. Now." The conflict. There was silence again, long, thick, and painful. Then, her son spoke, his voice breaking, "Mom, I'll come see you soon. I promise." But the line clicked before she could answer. She stood there, phone in hand, heart pounding. Outside, the storm clouds began to gather, the wind whispering through the trees. Her hands trembled as she whispered to herself, "What's happening to him?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. The letter she writes again. That night, she sat at her desk once more, pen in hand. She began writing, "My son, if you ever forget who you are, remember, you were loved before you were named." Her tears blurred the ink, but she kept writing. When she finished, she placed the letter in an envelope and sealed it with a kiss. She didn't plan to mail it, not yet. Instead, she placed it beside the wedding dress, as if waiting for a day she could wear both her hope and forgiveness again. The hall fell silent when my son stepped up to the microphone. The lights dimmed slightly, leaving a golden glow over his face. I could see his hands trembling, just a little, as he looked across the crowd. "There's something I need to say," he began, his voice firm but emotional. I held my breath. Every whisper stopped, every smile faded. He looked directly at his wife, then at me. "This wedding, it almost didn't happen the way it should have," he continued, and a soft murmur swept through the guests. My heart started pounding in my chest, unsure if I should feel proud or afraid of what he was about to reveal. He spoke about love, but not the kind that starts at an altar. He spoke about sacrifice. "A mother," he said slowly, "teaches you how to stand, even when the world wants you on your knees." My eyes filled with tears. The bride's face turned pale. Her family shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My son's tone grew stronger, almost defiant. "I was told to choose. To pick between the woman who raised me and the one I'm marrying. But love doesn't demand cruelty." The guests were frozen, their eyes flicking between us, a battle unfolding in silence. I could almost feel the bride's fury brewing beside him. Then came the words that tore through the air like thunder. So before I take any vows tonight, I want to thank the woman who taught me what love really means. My mother. Gasps echoed around the hall. Some clapped instinctively, others sat in stunned quiet. My son walked down from the stage, slow, steady, until he stood before me. He extended his hand and said softly, "Mom, will you dance with me?" Every eye was on us. My heart broke and healed at the same time. The music began, slow and haunting, as I took his hand, trembling. But somewhere behind the applause, I could sense the storm still brewing. The hall glowed under soft lights as my son and I danced. The air was thick with whispers, half admiration, half disbelief. The bride sat motionless, her bouquet trembling in her grip. My son whispered, "I'm sorry it had to happen this way, Mom." I smiled through my tears and replied, "No, my dear, sometimes truth needs to be loud." The melody wrapped around us like a memory, fragile, bittersweet. I caught a glimpse of the bride's mother rising from her seat, her lips tight with anger. Something in me knew this peace wouldn't last long. After the song ended, applause filled the room, hesitant at first, then stronger. My son kissed my forehead, the flash of cameras catching that moment forever. The bride stood beside him, her eyes glossy, her smile strained. "That was unexpected," she said under her breath. My son met her gaze calmly. "Love isn't about control," he replied. For a heartbeat, everything stood still. The guests looked on, unsure whether they'd just witnessed a celebration or a quiet rebellion. I turned away, pretending to fix my shawl, just to hide the tears that wouldn't stop. That night, when I returned home, the house felt warmer, not because of the lights, but because something heavy had lifted. I sat by the window, listening to the distant echo of wedding music fading into silence. For the first time in years, I didn't feel unwanted. My son had chosen truth over comfort, love over appearances. I whispered to the dark, "You did well, my boy." Outside, the rain began to fall gently, washing the world clean. And though the night was quiet, I could still hear his voice in my heart, steady, brave, and full of love. The hall fell silent when my son stepped up to the microphone. The lights dimmed slightly, leaving a golden glow over his face. I could see his hands trembling, just a little, as he looked across the crowd. "There's something I need to say," he began, his voice firm but emotional. I held my breath. Every whisper stopped, every smile faded. He looked directly at his wife, then at me. "This wedding, it almost didn't happen the way it should have," he continued, and a soft murmur swept through the guests. My heart started pounding in my chest, unsure if I should feel proud or afraid of what he was about to reveal. He spoke about love, but not the kind that starts at an altar. He spoke about sacrifice. "A mother," he said slowly, "teaches you how to stand, even when the world wants you on your knees." My eyes filled with tears. The bride's face turned pale. Her family shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My son's tone grew stronger, almost defiant. "I was told to choose. To pick between the woman who raised me and the one I'm marrying. But love doesn't demand cruelty." The guests were frozen, their eyes flicking between us, a battle unfolding in silence. I could almost feel the bride's fury brewing beside him. Then came the words that tore through the air like thunder. "So before I take any vows tonight, I want to thank the woman who taught me what love really means." My mother. Gasps echoed around the hall. Some clapped instinctively, others sat in stunned quiet. My son walked down from the stage, slow, steady, until he stood before me. He extended his hand and said softly, "Mom, will you dance with me?" Every eye was on us. My heart broke and healed at the same time. The music began, slow and haunting, as I took his hand, trembling. But somewhere behind the applause, I could sense the storm still brewing. The hall fell silent when my son stepped up to the microphone. The lights dimmed slightly, leaving a golden glow over his face. I could see his hands trembling, just a little, as he looked across the crowd. "There's something I need to say," he began, his voice firm but emotional. I held my breath. Every whisper stopped, every smile faded. He looked directly at his wife, then at me. This wedding, it almost didn't happen the way it should have, he continued, and a soft murmur swept through the guests. My heart started pounding in my chest, unsure if I should feel proud or afraid of what he was about to reveal. He spoke about love, but not the kind that starts at an altar. He spoke about sacrifice. A mother, he said slowly, teaches you how to stand, even when the world wants you on your knees. My eyes filled with tears. The bride's face turned pale. Her family shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My son's tone grew stronger, almost defiant. I was told to choose. To pick between the woman who raised me and the one I'm marrying. But love doesn't demand cruelty. The guests were frozen, their eyes flicking between us, a battle unfolding in silence. I could almost feel the bride's fury brewing beside him. Then came the words that tore through the air like thunder. So before I take any vows tonight, I want to thank the woman who taught me what love really means. My mother. Gasps echoed around the hall. Some clapped instinctively, others sat in stunned quiet. My son walked down from the stage, slow, steady, until he stood before me. He extended his hand and said softly, "Mom, will you dance with me?" Every eye was on us. My heart broke and healed at the same time. The music began, slow and haunting, as I took his hand, trembling. But somewhere behind the applause, I could sense the storm still brewing. They say weddings bring people together, but sometimes they only reveal who truly stands beside you, and who never did. My son's bride married for attention, but love demands more than that. It demands truth. And when the truth finally found its voice, it didn't scream, it spoke through a single, trembling speech. The kind that makes hearts stop and eyes open. I never went to that wedding, but I didn't need to. Because that day, my son didn't just become a husband, he became a man who finally understood love. And in his words, I found my peace. Forgiveness is quiet, but it echoes longer than any applause.